Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and talk about masculinity and men's issues. I'm your host, Brian Crawl, and today I'm going to be mansplaining to you about self-analysis. How well do you really know yourself? A lot of people think that they know themselves better than they actually do. In fact, studies have shown that people lack self-awareness, which is shown by an abundance of false self-reporting in surveys. And if you were to go to a therapist, all they're going to do is prompt you to tell them about your thoughts and feelings and then ask you questions to get you to try to extrapolate and reveal more information about them and then find the answers of what you are looking for yourself so that you can resolve your issues on your own. Since a lot of people's issues simply stems from having a lack of self-awareness. And so bringing that deeper awareness to people's own minds is extremely therapeutic and will oftentimes help people to deal with their own issues and solve them on their own. And so this is something that you can do fully on your own without even having a therapist through basic self-analysis by simply asking yourself the same types of questions that a therapist would in order to produce the same sort of information and answers you would get from therapy. So let's work on analyzing ourselves now by doing a bit of self-analysis workshopping here. This video isn't going to be something for just listening to, but is about the therapeutic technique of journaling. So you are going to have to get yourself a piece of paper and a pen because you're going to be doing some writing. So unfortunately, this video is only for people who actually know how to write. If you don't, you're going to have to go somewhere else. We'll start with some basic open-ended questions, and then those answers will lead to some more specific and more difficult questions, which there are several degrees of. Make sure you pause the video after I ask each question to take a few minutes to jot down your initial answers, and then return again to them all after the video to add and elaborate. First, the basics. What are your values? If you don't know, start with the video below on values. How would you describe who you are as a person without reference to anyone else? So for instance, without saying something like, I'm a great father, or I'm a great boss or employee, or a great friend, something like that. If you have no idea who you are, how to describe yourself, start with the videos below on self-identity and then come back to this one. How is who you are now different from who you want to be most ideally and ultimately? How is the lifestyle you're leading now different from what you want for yourself most ideally and ultimately? What are your short-term and long-term goals respectively? What do you want to do immediately over the next days and weeks or months? And what do you want to do in the upcoming year and maybe even the years beyond that? And then more importantly, why exactly do you want these things that you want? What will accomplishing them or having them do for you exactly? And then, more importantly than that, how is it you really want to feel in life? And most importantly, what makes you feel that way? Next, let's go on to a basic SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. All right, so you're going to write each one of those down on the paper and then make a list of each of them. First, what are your strengths? Then, what are your weaknesses? This is difficult for a lot of people, but you do have them, trust me. Next, what are some of your opportunities? These are generally things that are produced by your strengths or your strengths lead you to. And then, what are your threats? And these are oftentimes things due to your weaknesses. And these are limitations, shortcomings, ways in which you are stopping yourself from having the strengths or doing the things you want to do. And then, after you have listed each for the SWOT, you want to ask yourself, how can you turn your weaknesses into strengths? Some of these might be obvious, but some of them might not. All right, but that is generally the goal in analyzing your weaknesses and strengths, is to figure out how to turn your weaknesses into strengths. And then how can you turn your threats into opportunities? If there is a way at all, there may not be, but try to figure it out. Next, we're going to move on to a deeper psychological analysis. This part isn't going to be easy, especially not for any of you macho snowflakes out there who like to think of yourselves as stoic because you've numbed yourself to any emotions and many of your other mental processes. But this advanced work here is where things really start to progress. First, what are your faults and flaws? And you have to be honest with yourself here. What negative patterns are you stuck in, and how can you stop them? What is your biggest regret in life, and how can you make sure that never happens again? What are your worst failures in life, and what lessons can you learn from them? What beliefs do you have that aren't helping you, and maybe actually doing more harm than good? What beliefs do you have that aren't congruent with reality, what we would call delusions in psychology? What are your worst fears in life? What are you most afraid to face? And how can you better face your fears? What do you hate most in life? And how should you be dealing with that? So that hate doesn't become destructive as it can tend to. What psychological issues do you have? Are there any that you should be working on but aren't? Are there any issues you have that you are in denial of? Or another way of asking this would be, what are you in denial of? What are you avoiding thinking about? That's very important to consider. Think about what you haven't been thinking about. What do you feel guilty about or ashamed of? Do you have any emotional blockage, an aversion to feeling any specific type of emotion? What triggers you and causes the strongest emotional reactions in you? Do any of your emotions show up more strongly than others? Perhaps so strong that it's uncomfortable or may be problematic in your life. Any emotions that show up more strongly than others for you should be analyzed. So next, let's get into how to analyze your feelings. When you find yourself having a strong emotional reaction, you want to ask yourself, what are you feeling exactly? You need to name the feeling, all right? There are only so many emotions, all right? So name which one it is. For instance, you might say pissed off at first, but that's not really an emotion, technically speaking, is it? The word that you would be looking for would be anger. But then you want to ask yourself, is that really it? Is it really anger? Usually there's more behind it than that. So you need to get to the bottom of it, the root emotion that is behind the anger. And one of the most useful psychological tools in analyzing your emotions is finding the why. Why do you feel this way? So for instance, in this case, you'd ask yourself, why do I feel angry? And when contemplating the reason you feel angry and trying to pinpoint the source that triggered you, you will often realize there's something else underneath the anger, all right? And if there is another emotion underneath the anger, then inquire about that the same way, okay? Ask yourself why you feel that way. So oftentimes I'll find that when I'm ostensibly angry and maybe blowing up, it's actually because underneath that anger, I'm sad, all right? I'm feeling sad, or whatever other synonym you might want to use for sad in that situation. And then when I ask myself why I'm feeling that, I'll find that underneath that is actually hurt, all right? Pain. I'm feeling hurt in some way. So the anger is often rooted in hurt and is a reaction to feeling some sort of pain or suffering. So you want to keep asking yourself why you feel that way until you get to the root cause beneath it all. And you don't have to use the word why either, okay? You could use other wording. You could ask yourself, what am I really angry about, right? Or what makes this hurt so much? Or what am I really scared of, right? Or whatever your emotional reaction is, you ask yourself some sort of why type of question in order to try to figure out why is it so strong in this case and what is the underlying cause of it. After you've produced answers to these questions, then you need to continue to ask yourself more why type of questions about the underlying root cause and continue doing so until you cannot any further without repeating yourself. And that's how you know you've gotten to the base root cause. However, there are still more questions you should be asking yourself about your emotions. All right, because these ones so far have been actually very general. And so after you've done this, what you want to do is to try to be more specific. All right, so here are some more specific questions that are a bit deeper and darker and more difficult, but will really help you with your self-actualization. So these are what I call the advanced, difficult, but transformative questions. When you're looking to make some seriously advanced progress, ask yourself these questions. What am I afraid to admit to myself about myself? What do I dislike about myself? What do I love about myself? If I could clone myself and have a relationship with myself, how would I treat myself? In what ways do I treat myself badly instead of giving myself the care that I need? What am I looking for emotionally in women? What emotional needs do I need to get met by them? And how can I meet them myself and make myself feel that way instead of having to rely upon a female for it? What do I need to learn from my past heartbreaks so that they do not repeat? What negative traits have I inherited from my parents? How have I recreated my relationship with my mother or my parents' relationship with my girlfriends? What ego defense mechanisms do I use when I feel insecure or intimidated? And are they really healthy and good for me and helping, or are they doing more harm than good? What other coping mechanisms do I use, and which ones of those are actually healthy and which ones aren't and are also doing more harm than good? In what ways am I externally validated, and do I seek approval from others, especially women? And whose validation in my life should really matter to me? Who in my life is a negative influence that is not helping me, and who I should really just cut out of my life and stop associating with? How would I be different if I thought people would accept me and like me unconditionally? What things can I do for myself that will allow me to be more independent? And lastly, what ways am I self-sabotaging and stopping myself from self-actualizing and being the person that I want to be most ultimately? All obviously very difficult questions that when you are able to answer honestly and authentically and articulately, you will be helping yourself more than probably any therapist ever would. Now, assuming that none of you are actually writing any answers down while listening to this, now you need to go back and start over and actually do that so that this self-analysis workshopping can actually take effect, because without the writing down of your answers, it simply isn't going to be as effective as you want it to. All right, so go back and do that, because that concludes this video. Thanks for listening. I hope I mansplained that good enough for you. If you like what you heard, please click the like button. And if you feel you gained some value from this video and would like to give some back, please do so with the PayPal link below, because your support helps fund me doing this work and fight the good fight for men like you. And if you're a deep intellectual thinker like me and are really into philosophy and metaphysics and ontology and spirituality and theoretical physics and other such things, be sure to get yourself a copy of the Bible of Esoteric Knowledge, linked below, on sale for a special price that won't last long and is sure to give you the intellectual stimulation that you hunger for. It is an extremely dense read that is written in verse format like the Bible and is so information packed, full of the most esoteric knowledge that you can find, with a lot of Eastern influences such as Taoism and Buddhism and shamanism. So get your copy at the Amazon link below, and otherwise you can stay tuned for the next video coming out tomorrow, which will be on the topic of self-actualization. And until then, take care of yourselves, men, because no woman out there is going to.